actually maybe about 5 minutes in at this point. So maybe a little bit more than 2 minutes. Again, there's some variation in the predicted 7-minute time period. It's not exact. We might hear a little early, a little later.
So as we were saying, if you're in Central Florida, head outside right now. You should be able to see this glowing streak cross over as we are targeting. There's that streak I was just mentioning. That's a live view, not thermal. This is heading towards the Atlantic coast of near Jacksonville, Florida. So a beautiful view, such a striking visual that we have for these nighttime splashdowns.
Recovery teams are in position off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. And we are still targeting our expected splashdown time of 9:17 p.m. Pacific, 12:17 a.m. Eastern. We only have about a minute and some change of this blackout period anticipated. And again, there's some variation on when we can hear from the crew.
So what you're seeing on your...
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
So at this point, we're going to hear SpaceX Core begin to hail. As Gary said, this blackout period is estimated. So we're now beginning to reach out to the crew to see if we've regained that communications capability.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
What you're seeing on your screen now is a live view of the thermal cam on the WB-57.
SpaceX,
And we hear Crew-6 from inside the cabin on the back end of the blackout.
Copy, Dragon. We see a healthy flight computer. Expect automated chute deployment.
SpaceX, Dragon, copy.
There's our live view of the crew, our first view of them on the other side of that communications blackout. At this point in time, they are re-entering through the Earth's atmosphere over the coast of Florida, heading towards Jacksonville, Atlantic coast. Up next will be the deployment of the drogue parachutes, which should happen in about 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes.
Yeah, you can see they got through some of the thicker parts of the atmosphere, and that plasma buildup is starting to dissipate. We have about, less than 2 minutes or so.
Dragon, SpaceX, GPS converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
SpaceX, Dragon, copy. Receive it.
All right, so that call out just letting the crew know that they can expect to have the initial parachute deployment. That is the drogue parachutes, and that those typically deploy about 18,000 feet. At that point in time, the capsule is going around 350 miles per hour.
Some of the data and telemetry from Dragon is in meters, so if you do hear those calls from the crew and from us, some of the telemetry we're seeing is in the metric system. Confirmation that seat rotation is in progress. This allows the crew to be in the proper position to take the loads of the chutes as they experience the G-forces that the chutes exhibit upon deployment. They provide some drag on the vehicle. And again, we're traveling about 350 miles an hour. So from here, with the drogue deployments and main deployment, we're going to get down to about 15 miles an hour. Drogue deployment coming up in approximately
Dragon,
20 seconds.
Brace for drogue window.
And we're roughly 30 seconds away from that drogue deployment. SpaceX Core just telling the crew to prepare for the deployment of those drogue parachutes. At this point in time, they are around, or when the drogues are deployed, they're traveling around 350 miles per hour. At the time that the main parachutes are deployed, just seconds later, they'll be going around 120 miles per hour. So these drogue parachutes help provide further deceleration as well as stability for the capsule prior to those main parachute deployments.
Drogue pyros have fired, and we have good confirmation of drogue chutes. 2 drogues.
It's a view from inside the parachute bucket.
Dragon, nominal descent rate and recovery team reports a visual on 2 healthy drogues.
SpaceXdragon copies, that's good news.
Should see drogue chute jettison here momentarily. We'll see those 2 chutes that you see be released from the capsule, just like so, and release the 4 parachutes, now deploying.
At this point in time, Dragon has saved all of its propulsion systems and is now has already terminated that nitrox suit and cabin purges. Those were helping to keep the crew cool during the reentry. Looks like we have 4 very beautiful and healthy main parachutes.
Dragon, we see a nominal descent rate on 4 healthy mains.
SpaceXdragon copies, and SpaceXdragon coming up on 1,000.
So there's that confirmation.
Copy, 1,000 meters.
Confirmation of those 4 healthy chute deployments. Now standing by for splashdown. At the point of splashdown, the capsule will be going about 15 or 16 miles per hour. Continuing to decelerate from a speed of about 120 miles per hour.
800.
So we will now begin.
Copy, 800.
To hear Commander Steve Bowen call out the altitude as they approach the water surface.
That is again in meters.
Landing in water is simpler and provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. We had to learn how to make Dragon waterproof, but once you do that, it's very much a rinse, review, reuse type process.
600.
Copy, 600.
600 meters, and the descent rate is as predicted, meaning we're targeting that splashdown time in about a minute.
Live view of Dragon Endeavour with the Crew-6 team members on board, being held up by 4 beautiful main parachutes.
Dragon, we see 400.
We're now about 400 meters above the ocean surface.
SpaceXdragon 200 braced for splashdown.
Copy, braced for splashdown.
Again, the seats have been rotated in a position to take the loads of re-entry and parachute deployment as well as splashdown. The crew is braced. We are inside 100 meters.
Dragon Endeavour continuing its slow descent. There we can see splashdown on screen. Those parachutes are then cut and released. Dragon Endeavour has now returned home. NASA astronauts Steve Bowen, Woody Hoburg, Sultan Alneyadi, and Aandrey Fedyaev.
SpaceXdragon splashdown. We are in water rough riding.
Copy, splashdown, and we see main chutes cut.
After a 17-hour return journey from space, Crew-6 is home.
So the teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes to make their way to Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Aandrey inside the Dragon. You can see the recovery forces and some of the views that you're seeing. Of course, these views being provided by the recovery vessels. You saw there was a helo deployed, providing some visuals and lighting of the Dragon capsule.
Copy, Stable 1. Dragon Endeavour, on behalf of NASA and SpaceX, welcome back home. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
Thanks, SpaceX. Endeavour, we greatly appreciate all the support from all the initial training through the launch, throughout the mission, keeping us abreast of all the status of the vehicle, and all the support all the way down. This has been incredible. Greatly appreciate it, and look forward to working with you all again.
Copy all, and you've got a room full of happy people here. We've got some systems to verify safe before we give the boats a go to approach. I'll be back with you on that topic in a minute.
And SpaceX Dragon copies. We'll just enjoy the wallowing here. It might be soothing. Maybe I'll be napping soon.
So there we just heard SpaceX Core just indicating to the crew that we're going to do some checks here. Here from Mission Control Hawthorne, we're going to do some system checks to make sure that everything is safe as necessary on the Dragon Endeavour capsule. They will then give the go for safe approach to the teams there that you see on your screen in the fast boats. One of those boats will focus on recovering the parachutes from the water. The other will begin inspections, a sniff test for those onboard propellants, nitrogen tetroxide and monomethylhydrazine. They are toxic if someone were to breathe them, so we definitely want to ensure the safety of the entire recovery team as well as the crew. So one of the teams in the fast boats will perform a sniff test using devices while wearing personal protective equipment to ensure that none of those propellants have leaked out and that there's no vapors lingering from, just many minutes ago when those thrusters were actually firing back in space.
Precisely. Now, this is the fourth splashdown of Dragon Endeavour and completes the fourth mission, Crew-6, splashing down right on time, 12:17 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:17 p.m. Pacific Time. We're getting views from the recovery vessels that are out many nautical miles away from the coast of Jacksnoville, Florida. And the crew and teams here in Hawthorne reported a stable 1 position. That just notifies that the capsule is in the ideal position, floating in the Atlantic Ocean there, upright, with the heat shield in the water and the nose cone pointed towards the sky, as you see there.
As you mentioned, this is the 4th splashdown for this particular capsule. Most recently, it supported Axiom 1. Prior to that, Crew 2. And prior to that, Demo 2. So this capsule, I have great personal attachment to. I had the opportunity as part of my day job to go inside the capsule while we were building it. And when I say building it, I mean like for the first time, not during the refurbishment process. And when we were originally building it for the Demo 2 mission, I just remember being inside this capsule and thinking,
Dragon, SpaceX, we are go for recovery personnel to approach the capsule. Expect fast boats alongside in just a few minutes.
Dragon top, we look for the light.
All right, good news there from Mission Control, letting the crew know that everything checked out from a systems check, and the team there on screen in the fast boat now has the green light to approach and begin performing these sniff checks for those vapors for the onboard propellants. Just to conclude my thought, it's always great to see this capsule fly and land, and it just makes me so happy to see it with another mission under its belt.
It's part of the design of the Dragon capsule is to be reusable. So even after the harsh conditions of 3,500 degrees of plasma buildup and being in the salty ocean, teams are still able to refurbish it and prepare it for the next mission. And this is the 4th successful flight of Endeavour. So after those hypergol checks, Dragon teams we may see some of the team members crawling on the outside of Dragon and begin the rigging process, as the recovery vessel Megan has the equipment necessary to bring the Dragon out of the water into what's called the Dragon's nest. And that allows the capsule to be positioned and stable on a boat and allow some of the personnel on board that boat, that ship, to open up the side hatch. We were talking about the side hatch a little earlier. That has remained closed through the duration of the mission. The last time it was open was on Launch Pad 39A, as some of the teams were preparing Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Aandrey for their launch to the International Space Station and the beginning of their expedition of science, maintenance, and upgrades aboard. Now it'll be opened again here very shortly. It does take some time, so it could be 30 minutes to an hour before we actually see them on the boat and they start egressing the capsule. But we'll provide coverage until they're safely aboard the recovery vessel Megan, and all 4 crew members have egressed Dragon.
So this image that we see here was taken just minutes ago, a beautiful capture of the moment when Crew-6 was re-entering over Florida. We can actually see NASA's VAB and Pad 39A in the distance. So this is such a cool time-lapse capture of the re-entry streak that we saw just minutes ago of the Crew-6 re-entry and splashdown.
Now, of course, we have recovery teams out there that are executing these operations. We can actually see some of the personnel there. We do have a public affairs officer on recovery vessel Megan, Courtney Beasley, who is standing by and watching the operations unfold and providing some coverage from there. I'll do a comms check with Courtney Beasley, who's there via satellite phone. Courtney, can you hear us?
Gary, I have you loud and clear. How do you hear me?
Loud and clear. Courtney, we were very jealous, and we were talking a lot, Kate and I, about the views of Dragon's re-entry through the atmosphere and the plasma trail and the landing, of course, in the Atlantic Ocean. I can't imagine a person who had a better view than you. From your perspective on recovery vessel Megan, how was that landing?
Gary, it was absolutely beautiful. We were about 1.5 nautical miles away from the landing zone, and we had a great view from the front of the ship. We were actually able to track the spacecraft. Starting when it broke the horizon, we heard the sonic boom loud and clear and tracked the spacecraft all the way down through splashdown.
Dragon, SpaceX,
There's something beautiful
sweeps,
about a
and
nighttime
unfired ordnance
splashdown.
checks nominal.
The only thing lighting
Rigging
the sky
is
up
in
tonight
progress,
was the moon, the
and it's
stars,
approximately
and Crew-6
25 minutes
returning
until
back home
capsule
to Earth.
lift. Stand by for a PMC with the SpaceX flight surgeon on the ship.
And
we did just hear a call out indicating that the sniff checks were successful, so the close approach team now has the green light to begin climbing on board the Dragon capsule, so we should see the recovery continue along. But I want to hear more from Courtney with her bird's eye, or with her live action view.
That's right. Yeah. Back to you, Courtney. We just wanted to pause for some of those communications with the crew and just follow along on the action here. But really want to understand what it's like there. You got some beautiful views. We are seeing, some of the seas. I think that we're tracking about. We're tracking sea states and wind, and we were talking about weather quite a bit leading up to today's landing. From your perspective, how is the weather out there?
Yeah, Gary, it's about 80 degrees out here right now with fairly clear skies. Like I said, we were able to track that spacecraft pretty good tonight. About 9-mile-an-hour winds out of the east. The waves are considered to be rolling waves, so they're not choppy, but they are pretty big and more spread out rolling waves. But weather-wise, I think the crew will like what they feel when they get out of that capsule today and take their first breath of fresh air back here on Earth.
Just to get some appreciation of what it took to stage the recovery forces and be prepared for this moment, just really moments after Dragon splashed down. We saw some of those fast boats rolling out to make sure that they were getting the crew as quickly as possible. Can you give us a sense of what it's taken to make sure the recovery vessels were here at this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Our journey actually started several hours ago in Jacksonville. The MedOps teams and the recovery director boarded the first helicopter, and they were the first group to arrive on the ship about 4.5 hours before splashdown. So those medical teams took the time to get everything situated on the ship and ready to tend to the crew. And about 2 hours before splashdown, they deployed the fast boats into the water. I was actually on the second helicopter out, and we landed on the helicopter pad on top of the vessel about an hour before splashdown. And all of the teams have been hard at work since we touched down on the boat to get their various disciplines ready for Crew-6 to arrive home.
Excellent, Courtney. And last question before we let you go is we're seeing some of the recovery personnel on the Dragon capsule preparing for its eventual lift onto recovery vessel Megan. What can we expect to see in the next few moments?
So once the crew is out
Copy. We also have you 5x5.
they'll be
Boats are working on you and rigging up the vehicle. I'll get back to you closer to capsule lift.
Teams, and we'll have the opportunity to take those spacesuits off and get comfortable back here on Earth. And then, of course, they'll run through those medical checks. They'll get back on the helicopter and head back to the airport where they'll board their planes back to Houston to begin their post-flight period. You're probably getting a better view than I am right now, so I'll let you walk through that. But back here on the ship, once the crew is off, they're not the only ones returning from space today. We'll actually stay here a little longer with the cargo team since there was International Space Station cargo returned on this flight. So once we get back to the airport, the cargo teams will begin doing cargo processing, taking photos of all of the articles that were included in the cargo, and they will pack all of that into box trucks that will take them back to various NASA centers. But Gary, an overall beautiful splashdown tonight, and I hope it was the same for you back in Hawthorne.
Absolutely, Courtney. We've been getting some fantastic views. Thank you so much for that report. That was Courtney Beasley out on the recovery ship, providing live coverage from the landing site just off the coast of Jacksonville. We're back in the action now, seeing some of the views from the recovery vessel and the recovery operations team, including helicopters, fast boats, jet skis, and of course, we're getting views from some of the ships that are standing by waiting to actually pull Dragon out of the water.
So at this point in time, the Dragon capsule has safed all of its systems. Mission Control did a systems check to make sure that that was true and accurate. They gave the fast approach teams the green light to approach and begin the rigging process, which is what we are now seeing underway. Additionally, they have recovered the parachutes from the water.